After I met Ellie Reeve of Vice News, I had a lengthy phone call with her, as I mentioned, and I think that you're going to enjoy it. I apologize for the lack of sound quality that you become accustomed to on this production, but the conversation was pretty interesting, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So, without further ado, welcome to the Radical Agenda.
Hello.
Good morning, Al.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good for a guy who's facing 40 years in prison. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm biking, so there might be a little bit of noise.
Well, I'm glad to hear you getting your exercise.
Yeah, well, saving the earth, it's my duty. So, wait, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. It's a very quiet line. I don't think it's difficult. So your case starts August 13th, right?
Yeah.
I mean, can we just, I know this is more an atmospheric question, but, how do you feel about it being basically the anniversary of Charlottesville last year?
I would go ahead and call that suboptimal. I'm not, I'm pissed because, my trial was supposed to be in February, and the prosecutor got to talking about, maybe giving me the prosecutor. I'm not supposed to talk about this. The prosecutor conned us into asking for a continuance. Okay.
Okay.
And so I can't. I'm afraid I'm not allowed to say how that happened. But he fucking screwed us. He said that he was going to give us something we wanted if we asked for a continuance. And as a result, I waived my right to a speedy trial, which has made this a financial fucking suicide mission. And as you note, fucking put it on the day after the anniversary.
Yeah.
God help me if Jason has that stupid fucking rally the day before. There's going to be National Guard all over the fucking city and probably bodies on the pavement. And then I'm going to fucking go and try to have a fair trial the day after that.
Wow. Yeah, what are your thoughts on the Kessler rally?
I wrote a piece on it. I saw
that.
Okay, I said follow Kessler to your peril. That this guy's, the first thing was obviously a damn shit show, right? But, I had no idea who Jason Kessler was on August 11th, 2017, right? The guy's been calling me up asking me for help, and the truth of the matter is, like I said in the thing, I'm sympathetic to his effort because if these assholes can riot the streets and get what they want, then that's going to become a regular feature of our political existence, and I don't want that to happen. I want their behavior discouraged, and having another rally seems like a fantastic way to do that. But Jason is completely incapable of handling this, and it's way too fucking dangerous. And so, while going back to that park might be a worthwhile endeavor, going back there under the leadership of Jason Kessler while everybody bails on him because he's incompetent is a goddamn suicide mission, so I don't think it's a good idea.
So this is something I've kind of noticed, when there's been coverage of Jason Kessler. I feel like it's sort of missing the context that Kessler is not an experienced organizer or particularly well regarded for his organizational skills.
Right. He's never what little I know about him is he's a complete fucking mess, right? And so, I've seen these, clips of things from some deposition transcript. He's not even held a regular fucking job. He was apparently living in some kind of mental health housing and was being subsidized and all this shit. And I'm I followed this asshole into a fucking war zone. It's the stupidest fucking thing in the world.
Okay, so here's something I've never figured out. How did that happen? How did it get so big with him in charge of it? Was it a snowball effect?
The thing is, I honestly don't know, right? I wasn't, it's funny to me, right? Because I'm going through all these lawsuits, right? And I'm not holding you responsible for this, but what happened is I became the fucking face of that thing because of you, right? And so all of these people think that I was fucking some big figure in Unite the Right. I have no fucking idea how they put that thing together. I had nothing to do with it. Literally, Jason Kessler was like, I don't want to talk to this vice bitch. You want to do it? And I was like, okay, right? Like, just literally how I ended up talking to you. And, you know, I can make good television, as you're seeing, right? And so, because of that fucking documentary, everybody thinks I'm some kind of kingpin of the United Right. I never met Jason Kessler before I came down to Charlottesville that week. I never met fucking almost any of these people. So I had nothing to do with the organization of it. And like, when, you know, everybody's like, Kessler's event, and I'm just assuming the guy's got a reputation. And like, after this thing goes down, I'm like, what, just some kind of fucking former Occupy Wall Street asshole? And I'm fucking following you into a fucking war zone with a bunch of Nazis? What the hell's happening here?
It's crazy. Like, I remember when it started getting bigger, and at the time I was like, who is Jason Kessler? Like, anyway, so your trial is scheduled for 5 days, right?
Yeah.
And like, why? I mean, it seems like a fairly simple case. Like, are there going to be a lot of witnesses? Like, why is it so long?
Well, there's a few things to that. One, you know, I think so I thought that was a little bit long myself, right? But, you know, this time, you know, a preliminary hearing usually takes like 2 hours or less, right? And the preliminary hearing took all day because we're going frame by frame through all this video, right? And we've got more video than we did then. We've got more witnesses than we did then. We've got more information than we did then. And we've got to pick a jury, right? And jury selection on this thing is not exactly going to be easy, right? Because the whole entire population there has been completely propagandized against me. The media, you know, I thought, you know, whatever happened with Vice News is one thing. What the goddamn local media has been doing is absolutely disgusting. And so, you know, it's going to be a hell of a thing trying to pick a jury. There's going to be, like I said, a lot of video, and it has to be gone through frame by frame. And there's witnesses and stuff. So, you know, who knows? Maybe it doesn't last the whole 5 days, but that's what my lawyer asked it to be slotted for.
Okay, and is the picking of the jury part of that 5 days?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you and your lawyer feel about your chances?
I actually feel pretty good as far as these things go, okay? You know, I understand that, like, you see that video and you see pepper spray get released and you just think Nazi pepper spray criminal, right? But, like, the truth of the matter is I did not do what I'm accused of doing, okay? I didn't do anything. I never did anything to them. And they just saw that picture of me spraying the one guy, and then they went and they fucking said that I sprayed them. And I'm very lucky that, like, video came out afterwards showing that that was complete nonsense, right? Now, let me explain. You know, those 2 charges were dropped at the preliminary hearing, okay? That's what I'm suing them over, all right? And I still face, you know, I had 1 count remaining, and then the prosecutor indicted me on a 2nd count of malicious release, okay? Now, in theory, the prosecutor doesn't necessarily have to prove that I sprayed, okay? What he has to prove to convict me is that I sprayed twice and that injury occurred both times, okay? And so, in theory, like, they could convict me of spraying Beanie Man, all right? But that's bullshit, because Beanie Man has had ample opportunity to present himself, right? Know who Beanie Man is and won't produce him. You know what I'm saying? We identified the other guy. His name's Tom Massey. He's some Bolshevik asshole from Philadelphia who was arrested at the J20 riots, who told the Washington Post at that event, yeah, I wish it was more violent. I wanted to punch a Nazi. Hopefully I'll get to do that next time. Okay? Huh. So, like, you know, these guys came out there looking for a problem, and they found one, shockingly enough. And, like, you know, they're nowhere to be found, and I'm the only one on trial. But, like, the judge at the preliminary hearing said pretty plainly that you haven't presented any evidence that he did anything to... And so that's why we're suing them. in civil court while we're still going forward on the criminal case.
Okay. And do you feel like the prosecutors has gone after your case so aggressively because, like, they want to hold somebody accountable for what happened?
He's a Republican. He wants everybody to know how not racist he is.
Okay, I didn't know he was a Republican.
Yeah. And what he's been doing is he's been trying to make my life a living hell the whole time, right? Like he's a really dishonest guy, right? He knows his witnesses are lying. He literally caught them lying. You know what I'm saying? And he's just trying to do everything in his power to get me to fold because he doesn't want a fucking trial any more than I do. Right now there's a motion to revoke my bond. It's the second fucking time he's done this. And the last time it was completely fucking frivolous. All he ended up with was putting this stupid alcohol monitor on me. And when they put that alcohol monitor on me, I told the guy who was put it on, I said, how much to keep this thing when we're done here? Because, you know, it's not exactly a punishment.
So what's your take on the federal civil suit signed to Kessler?
You know, the thing, I just finished reading the decision on our motion to dismiss from yesterday, right? And I thought I was impressed with the thoughtfulness of it. My lawyer has spoken highly of this judge before. And when I found out that the whole thing wasn't dismissed, I was a little bit pissed off. But when I read the thing, I said, okay, fine. Now, I'm not an attorney, right? So I'm not entirely familiar with the process, but I get the idea of what this guy's saying. So the way the process goes is these people allege something. And if they plausibly allege something, then the case gets to continue, right? So, for example, they say that they have plausibly alleged that I conspired to engage in racially motivated violence. And one of the proofs of this is that I said, I think a lot more people are going to die before we're done here on Vice News, right? Well, what I said to you, Elle, you might recall, is because the blacks are offing each other in staggering numbers from coast to coast, and we don't really want to have a part of that anymore, right? Which is to say that people are dying all of the fucking time, and the fact that one died at this particular demonstration is, one symptom of the violent society that we live in, all right?
Yeah.
The whole thing is... Yeah. I understand. You think I'm a violent menace too, but I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of context that's missing from that thing, which is why I kept my own recorder. Okay. And so, you asked me repeatedly at McIntyre Park if I wanted violence, and every single time I told you no. Right. And that's completely lost in everything. Right before you got there, I gave an interview to some other news outlet that asked me if we wanted violence, and I told them absolutely not. Right. All of those things are completely missing because everybody wants to paint us as violent because you're producing war propaganda against us, right? And so,
will you be able to show, like, that other interview, for example, in court? Are you allowed to do that?
Yeah, I'll be able to. We were not able to present our own evidence at this stage of the thing. You better believe that before I lose a lawsuit, I can start providing some context, right?
Right.
And the judge said, in the thing, whether these things, turn out to be factually true remains. And he knew that some of the stuff was flat out frivolous, right? And, my assessment of it is, I think that once the context is provided, that judge is going to be pissed because he's been deceived by the plaintiffs. The plaintiffs know that they're misleading the court. They're doing these out of context things. They're painting this insane picture, and the only reason they were able to get away with it is because at this stage of the thing, we're not allowed to provide evidence. If we were allowed to argue with them about what actually happened, then their claims would be completely blown out of the fucking water. And when the judge realizes that he's been deceived, he's gonna be pissed.
Why do you think Enoch was the only one who had the case dismissed against him?
Did you read the decision?
I haven't read it all yet. I've only skimmed.
Yeah, it's a thing worth doing. It's because they literally didn't allege anything other than he's a racist podcaster who showed up in Charlottesville. Well, you can't be sued for being a racist podcaster who showed up in Charlottesville, right? If I hadn't been on Vice News, it probably would have dismissed it against me. You know what I'm saying? Like, the whole entire fucking thing here is, did you conspire to do fucking violence against people because of their race or their support of other races? That is the entirety of what's alleged. And if you can't plausibly allege that, you can't sue the person. Well, in the case of Mike Enoch, Mike was not at planning meetings. Mike was not engaged in violence. There's no statements of Mike saying, go do violence against these people. There's nothing like that, right? Even with, like, the James Fields thing, they used what I said about Fields to say that I forget the word that they used, but essentially supported what he did. And Mike didn't even do any of that. Mike said things like, the guy deserves a trial, right? And so that's basically why, is that, nobody plausibly alleged that he conspired to engage in racial violence.
What do you think about the role of the leaked Discord chat? What role that plays in this case?
The truth of the matter is, that's not too relevant to me personally, because if you can look on Unicorn Riot and see what the entirety of my Discord chat was. It's literally 12 messages, and the first one is, I don't use this thing. Okay?
Yeah.
And so I don't even know what all that stuff was, and I think that not knowing that has sort of made me look bad, by the way, because as I hear the context of it, there's all these things that, don't sound so great, right? I come down here, Al, and I'm like, yeah, I want to promote my radio show, right? And from some of those messages, I do understand how people get the picture that there were people involved in this event who wanted fucking trouble, right? And so, those things, if anything, I understand they might not work out well for some people, and it's probably going to be a central thing. As usual for me, Al, go ahead, just provide all the information about me that somebody can, right? For me, it helps, right? Because I'm not involved in this thing. When they upheld the fucking thing against me, they say, Cantwell participated in the Discord. Okay, well, when the judge sees that my participation in the Discord is, I don't use Discord, well, I think he's going to be pissed off that they alleged that, right? Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, I'm glad that there are records. I'm not so happy that what I believe is a Discord employee is running around leaking shit to Unicorn Riot. I think that that's disgusting. I hope somebody finds out who that asshole is and that he's made to fucking suffer legally. But, I'm always good with fucking information coming out, okay? The Discovery and the Signs case, they asked for everything. Well, Elle, as you're aware, I fucking record my phone calls. You know what I'm saying? I gave them everything that I fucking had. I didn't even hesitate. You know what I'm saying? I gave them everything. I gave them my texts. I gave them my recorded phone calls. That's why I wore a body camera to this thing. As far as I'm concerned, the more information, the better.
How do you think some of your comrades are handling the pressure from the news? The other people named in it.
Well, I'm trying not to stoke infighting, El. And so I'm not going to get too specific on that, but let's just say that some people have handled it better than others, right? And what?
I get the sense that the pressure is getting to some of those people.
They'd have to be insane for it not to get to them. I mean, look at what's been thrown at us, right? You got guys just spending a decade in prison. You got, fucking people are suing us for everything. You've got criminals attacking us in the street and the media and the government not giving a shit about it, right? I mean, we're basically, even those of us who are completely law-abiding are essentially outlaws because we've lost the protections of the state. We don't have the same protections of rule of law that everybody else has. That's scary.
You mean because, like, say if you held a public rally, there would be fights and police wouldn't necessarily step in?
Well, I mean, whether they step in or not is not the biggest concern to me. As you can see, when these people attack us, we're more than capable of handling ourselves, right? The problem is that, like, you know, you look at this decision about this, look at all this stuff that they did preparing for violence. It's like, fucking, we've been watching black-clad anarchists attack people in the streets from coast to coast since 2016. Of course we were prepared for violence, right? Like, this just is completely lost on people that, like, James Hodgkinson didn't just try to whack the Freedom Caucus a couple of months ago, right? That Micah Johnson last year didn't fucking whack 5 cops in Dallas at a Black Lives Matter demonstration. Everybody's acting like this is so completely fucking out of the blue that just Nazis came prepared for violence. Yeah, we came prepared for violence. These people fucking threatened the shit out of us. You know, and nobody fucking seems to notice that. It's just completely out of context. There's no such thing as us defending ourselves.
How do you feel? There seems to be very few alt-right groups who got out of Charlottesville unscathed, except for maybe Identity Europa. What do you think about that?
Well, Identity Europa didn't come out unscathed. Go read the decision. They're still party to the lawsuit. You know?
Okay, right.
You know? So what I make of that is, yeah, our enemies, this is lawfare, right? You know, the whole entire point of this thing is to jam up everybody, okay? And so they do everything in their power to cause everyone as much trouble as possible. And remember, we're dealing with Jews here, okay? So they have resources. And so, you know, they did everything in their power to fuck as many people as humanly possible. And this being a complete goddamn shit show, you know, they had ample opportunity to do so. And so, you know, of course they didn't make it out unscathed. If we had made it out unscathed, that would have, like, been, you know, that wouldn't fulfill the mission of the kikes who are trying to destroy us, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I guess, like, it seems like there's just, like, a lot, like, there's been a lot of sort of struggle, like, Richard Spencer quit his college tour. Heimbach had his own personal drama. You know, Kessler is not holding it together. You know, I was wondering, like, what do you think about that?
Well, you know, we're in sorry shape, though, you know. But here's the thing. Look, an event like this one serves its purpose by doing that, too, right? Men get their metal tested, and we shed dead weight, okay? And so, you know, if you view the world that we do, this is a struggle for our fucking survival. And if people are going to fucking fall off and not be able to handle it because a bunch of kites said some nasty things about you on the television or in a courtroom, well, then you're not cut out for this struggle, right? So let's have a pressure game and let's see who cracks. And we're seeing, aren't we?
So I have some friends who are in the Army, and they were in the Iraq War. And they said that, like, one of the sort of sometimes encouraging but sometimes disappointing things about being down there is it's not always who you'd expect who cracks under pressure, and it's not always who you'd expect who is strong under pressure. Like, has that been true for you? Have you
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I'm sure it's been true for a lot of other people, right? You know, I got a lot of people who come to me now, like, I can't believe the crying Nazi's the only one who's fucking standing up to this shit.
Really?
And so, yeah, that's exactly how it happens, right? I mean, everybody, look, when things are going well, it's really easy to portray yourself as a tough guy, right?
Yeah.
It's when fucking things get fucked up and people are able to go through that men get their metal tested.
Can you give me examples of at least people performing better than expectations?
Well, look, let me just go and give all of these guys some credit. With everything that's been thrown at us, I mean, come on. You can't, it would be insane to expect some people not to crack. So I think that everybody's, considering what's been thrown at us, I think that everybody's gone above and beyond the fucking Call of Duty, right? I think a lot of people thought that they were just walking into another protest, another Pikeville, another Auburn or whatever, right? That's what I thought until I got down there, right? All this crap about he had all these guns, he was going there for a war. Like, what the fuck, I didn't bring no goddamn AK-47 to Lee Park, brought that shit down there thinking I was going to go shooting or whatever. I knew that we could fucking see some trouble because we had dangerous enemies, but I had no idea what we were walking into there, So, everybody got hit like, holy shit, I've never seen anything like this before. And it was every facet of pressure that could be applied: media, legal, social, economic. We all lost our payment processes. We got shut out of social media. I mean, like, every fucking crazy thing that could happen to a person happened to all of us all at the same time. And everybody was like, holy shit, I never realized that Jews were this powerful, right? And so, I would say that everybody did a good job to some extent of standing up to pressure. And, just some people did better than others.
Okay. Yeah, it was like fascinating after Charlottesville, the degree to which these tech companies who had been like, well, we're content neutral, sort of cracked down, like not just Twitter, but like Cloudflare, like Swipe, all of those things.
Yeah, domain level censorship, dude. I mean, taking somebody's domain name, like what happened to the Daily Stormer, is something that should worry everybody. Everybody, every leftist out there is just like, I don't care what they do to Nazis, that's fine. Well, weren't these people, like a few years ago, really concerned about, anti-terrorism stuff that was being done to Muslims, right? They're like, oh, be careful what you do to the Muslims, because it'll be turned back around on you later, right? People used to understand the universality of these applications and concerned with the downstream implications, and that just goes right out the window with us. It's crazy, to shut us out of everything, payment processes, domain registrars, DDoS protection. I mean, it's like, these things, when that's the fucking weapon in play, you can start to understand how fascist regimes go down in history as so goddamn dangerous, because this is what we go through on our way to power, right? All these people do these fucking things to us. What do you think we're going to fucking do to our enemies when we take power?
So you're legally required to stay within the borders of Virginia? Is that the current situation?
I'm legally required to stay within a much shorter border than that. I got a GPS monitor on my ankle. I'm allowed to travel X number of miles from my place of residence.
Okay. And are you living alone?
I am not living alone. No, that's about as much as I'm going to tell you about where I'm at.
Okay. And people are allowed to visit you then?
Yeah, I mean, if I can have anybody I want come here,
And like, when you go to, say, the grocery store, what's that like? Do people recognize you?
No, I keep a very low profile, and so that has not been a problem. Like, I tried to go to the gym a couple of times, and like I felt eyeballs all over me, so I left and have them back, and I just got some equipment for the house. So, I don't stay out much. I go to the grocery store, I go get me something to eat, and I just bring it back, and I try to keep my head down.
So what are you going to be doing in advance of the trial?
Preparing, doing the show, shit posting, selling stuff.
And has your lawyer advised you not to do interviews, or?
I'm the worst client that a lawyer could have, right? Like, he keeps on telling me to shut up, and I'm like, I can't pay you if I shut up, right? I talk for a living, asshole. How do you think I'm fucking paying for 2 apartments, you know? And so, he would very much prefer that I be fucking quiet, but like, you know, he thinks like a lawyer. He don't understand that, like, you know, like in his mind, what's said in the media isn't relevant in the courtroom, and isn't that quaint, right? That's bullshit, right? These people, the reason that these people fucking bombard the media with horseshit about us is specifically to fucking poison juries and shit, right? And so he would far prefer that I just not say anything to anybody. But I am of the firm conviction that, you know, this is a story that needs to be told. And however bad your filthy industry perverts things, it's better to be able to get a fucking quote in there than not.
Yeah. I've found that to be true in my own life.
What's that?
I found in my own life that you're the best defender of yourself.
Yeah. You know.
Well, if we came down there, would you be open to an on-camera interview with us?
You're insane, right? You betrayed my location already. I can't trust you. You know. I wish that you had. You know, this is what I told you before, and I hope that you learn a fucking important lesson from this. Okay? You betrayed me, and now I'd have to be a fool to trust you, right?
Well, what if we went to a place that wasn't your home or whatever? So you didn't have to worry about that.
I'd still have to fucking meet you within my radius, which would fucking give up my region, which would have somebody sitting at the fucking supermarket waiting for me.
But so what happened with the Chiron is a long story. But we didn't give up your information in advance to Antifa in any of our interviews. There was a reporter that showed up to our interview, but that was not good of us. So,
look, let's just be honest with each other, okay? You're left-wing propagandists, okay? I fucking laughed my ass off. There was some Facebook post that Vice News is going to block archive.is because right-wing people are archiving it and using it to fucking discredit us by showing people exactly what we said. Come on, okay? You're not
Vice News?
Yeah.
Are you sure Vice News and not Vice.com?
Well, I'm not sitting in front of the screenshot at the moment. Maybe it's Vice.com. Maybe I'm incorrect.
It's a fine distinction to outsiders, but a significant one.
Well, yeah. In any case, Vice News is a left-wing propagandist outlet, and if you deny that, then you're just going to prove my distrust of you, okay? And so, you know, it's insane to suggest that, you know, you can be trusted generally, and especially after you've already done it. I don't care, you know, how hard you deliberated on the fact that you fucking portrayed the front of my hotel room and announced my city in front of millions of people on HBO after I told you that my life depended on you keeping that a fucking secret.
Not part of that deliberation.
I'm sorry?
It's not part of that deliberation.
Well, you know, I don't know. Maybe these people don't value you then, Elle, because you made a fucking agreement with me. And that agreement got violated. And so since you and I had the agreement, you're the one I can't trust, right?
I understand how you think.
You know, in the future, fucking tell your bosses that you're going to lose access to sources if they fucking betray secrets.
But if you want your views on the record, no, you wouldn't be watching our stuff about this.
Well, you know, I know exactly what's going to be done with my views. They're going to be fucking edited. You've got a 30-minute fucking news clip on HBO? You're going to talk to me for fucking 2 hours again, and you're going to clip out what fucking most suits the narrative, and it's going to go out there, okay? So I can do that with you over the phone. If you want, you know, if you want an in-person interview, I'm sorry to say that you've already displayed that you can't be trusted, and so I'll just have to sacrifice the benefits of your exposure.
But now again, you said I didn't portray you unfairly. Or
because look, I'm not pissed off about that thing, okay? Because I didn't expect you to do, right? This is why I had my own recorder. I said, you're not going to be, you couldn't put it in context if you wanted to. I talked to you for 6 fucking hours, right? You couldn't put it in context if you desired to. But the thing is that I knew in advance that you had no desire to, okay? You did exactly what I expected you to do, which is why I didn't get upset with you about it, okay? But what I did get upset with you about was betraying my fucking location, right? And so, you know, and afterwards, right, I get out of jail. You ask me for comment. I talk to you for like a fucking hour, and then your fucking outfit publishes a piece that says I don't respond to requests for comment, right? And then when you do publish my comment later on, you forget all about the fact that I've been framed for a fucking crime, and that video proves it, and you just say, I'm going to sue the alt-right and use it to fund white nationalism. That's all you thought was relevant, right? You're a propagandist, and I don't hold it against you. I'm a propagandist, too. We both got our jobs to do.
Well, I understand why you feel that way. But just think it over. We might be down there. Will you be doing any courthouse interviews?
I don't do courthouse interviews. When I go to Charlottesville, I can't get out of there fast enough. I'm afraid one of these lunatics is going to try to whack me.
I figure there's going to be a lot of security.
I'm sorry?
I figure there's going to be a lot of security at this thing.
Well, I thought the same thing about Unite the Right.
Right.
You know?
But this time it's not in Kessler's hands.
Well, you know, this time it's in the hands of the fucking Charlottesville Police Department, and they weren't exactly our best friends last time around, were they?
I don't know. I mean, I know you haven't been to these events, but I'm sure you've seen online. It's like UT Knoxville, Georgia, like places like that. It's really fascinating. Like the police don't want to be. They just create this massive space between the Antifa types and the alt-right people. Like there's like barely even visual contact.
Yeah, well, that's perfect. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I think it's worth letting them be visual. I mean, what's the fucking point? Nobody can see and hear each other. But like, you know, were you at the Pikeville thing?
No, Pikeville was one of the ones I didn't go to.
All right, you know, like Pikeville was perfect. You know what I'm saying? Like Pikeville was absolutely fucking perfect. They had, you know, we were on one side of the street, they were on the other side of the street. They had barricades, we're all on the sidewalks and shit, and there's cops in the street between the two barricades. I mean, it was perfect. You know, we obediently stayed in our cage. The communists kept on trying to hop the barriers, but the law enforcement intercepted them, right? You do shit like that, and nobody dies. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I do think, like, so in Knoxville, I mean, basically the alt-right people, Heimbach's people, went in through a parking lot and then over this pedestrian bridge, and then all the counter-protesters were, like, 2 blocks away, and it just seems like, what's the point?
Well,
like,
the point
is...
There's
no theoretical free speech exchange, you know what I'm saying? Like, even if it's, like, a bunch of FUs, like, theoretically, there's supposed to be an exchange of ideas.
Well, you know that there's no exchange of ideas with Antifa, right? These people are there for violence. And to the extent that they're making any noise, it's literally just trying to drown people out, right? And so I agree with you that it sort of defeats the purpose. You know, free speech is pointless if nobody can fucking hear you. But, you know, after Charlottesville, I mean, it's like you have to keep these people separate. You have to do whatever is necessary to keep those two groups from coming into contact. That's what law enforcement has to do. And frankly, I'm more than happy to defer to the cops at this point because we see what happens when we're left to defend ourselves.
Okay. Yeah, right. What did you think about, like, those 3%er people? They had showed up for a little while and then left. Did you ever have any contact with them?
No, I have no idea who they were. Like, I mean, I know what 3%er is just from my, you know, analyzation of extremist shit over the years, but like I couldn't name one of those guys. I couldn't pick one of them out of a lineup.
Yeah. Is there any this happened a while ago, but like what was the fallout from the stuff with you talking to the FBI?
Well, you know, it was an interesting thing to watch, frankly, because as I told you, Al, I came down here to promote a radio show, not to engage in a terrorist conspiracy, okay? And so, in my opinion, we're law-abiding people who are getting screwed, and if the fucking local authorities won't talk to and don't do anything about this problem, you got to talk to a higher authority. So talking to the FBI seems like the most reasonable thing in the world to me. And so I went to go do that, but, I didn't intend for this to be plastered all over the internet. I told Weave about it, sticking up for somebody else, and then he goes out and he tries to make me out like I'm snitching, like we're in some kind of fucking prison gang. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, yeah, I'm talking to the cops. We're not criminals. What do you mean I'm snitching? What am I snitching on? Did I get myself involved in something I don't want to be involved in? You know what I'm saying? And so you had all these people, but most of the people who were freaking out and fucking causing me a problem over this are like the anonymous bot accounts that nobody knows who they are, right? The people with reputations, for the most part, understood what I was doing, and I'll tell you this too. I won't name names, but I'm not the only one who's been talking to the fucking feds. I know that, right? I'm just the only one who is willing to say it out loud. And so, and everybody's going to have to talk in this civil suit. I mean, people are getting deposed and shit. It's the stupidest thing in the world. People go out, they talk about these things on their podcast, they talk about it on social media. They don't think they're informing the government when they do that or something, right? People go get deposed in a civil suit. They have to answer questions under penalty of perjury, and you think the FBI isn't going to read that, right? There's a bunch of people who, for some reason, decided to wage a war against me, and it wasn't for the reasons that they stated.
Well, what were the reasons?
Here's my honest thing about it. What I think, there's a couple of things. For one, I think some of these guys are genuinely bad actors. Okay, I don't think that Weave genuinely has our fucking best interest at heart. I think he's having a lot of fun, and so he combines with other people who want this to remain a strictly internet-based thing, right? That they're like, hey, I'm a podcaster, I'm a blogger, I have income and status, and I want to see it protected. And if this becomes a real-life thing, I'm going to get eclipsed because I won't go out into the world and risk anything, right? And so there's a lot of that. The other component of it is like, I imagine that there are people involved in this thing who do want trouble, right? There are people, the Discord logs have come up a whole bunch of times of fucking people saying fucking, things that sound violent. Well, if you're somebody who wants a goddamn race war, you probably don't want the fucking feds involved, Well, sorry to tell you, fellas, it's not what I came down here for. I fucking want to get this problem straightened out. I'd much rather have a lawful remedy. I saw what it looks like when law and order breaks down. I'd rather not be a regular feature of our existence. And so, you've got disparate factions all over this thing with different motives, but those are a few of the things that I think have conspired against me.
Okay. What do you think about Einbach, quitting the movement?
Well, I think that after what happened with Matt, stepping down was about as dignified a thing as he could do, right?
Yeah.
I didn't personally appreciate the way people jumped on him for that because they had other motives, right? They were shitting all over these guys because they fucking stood up to Antifa out in Michigan. And I'm like, well, I've got a picture of a guy with spiked knuckles about to fucking rip Matt's face open, and I don't think it's a good idea for us to be shitting on our combat veterans. And then, I went to bat for them, and I was about to start syndicating his podcast after they kicked him off TRS. And then this guy gets caught fucking his mother-in-law, and I'm like, are you out of your fucking mind? What's wrong with you? And so, Matt's got considerable talents, and I think that he's done a lot of great work, but once that happened, yeah, get out of the fucking cameras, stupid.
So people were upset about the violence in Michigan?
Yeah. They said it's bad optics,
I've been following that debate a little bit.
It's bad optics. I'm like, do you think it's better optics we get our fucking asses kicked walking into the building? These people fucking attacked us. And this time the cops seem to have noticed it since they charged more of the Bolsheviks than they did to us. That's a significant improvement over Charlottesville, I'd go so far as to say. Granted, they let them all cop to misdemeanors and walk, But, you know, it beats the shit out of letting them attack us and doing nothing about it.
I read some references to donors being unhappy with TWP and Heimbach.
Well, I don't know who the financial benefactors of TWP are. I know that I have had, let's say, I've had a benefactor or two contact me since I got out of jail, and they've been very helpful to me because they don't like the way a whole lot of people have handled things, and they think their resources are better spent with your humble correspondent.
Okay, and can you tell me more about their reasoning? Like, why is that?
Well, I have to figure out how to say this to you without betraying confidences, so give me a second here. You know, these people don't want to be identified clearly, and I don't want to repeat with a reporter the contents of our conversations, but, you know, look, what happened in Charlottesville was worse than anybody expected it to be, but again, like I told you earlier, the people who are serious about this view this as a struggle for our survival. And so if a bunch of fucking horrible things happen, it doesn't mean you stop, right? You can't stop just because your enemies want you to. You can't stop because your enemies are willing to do dangerous, evil things. You can't stop. It's a struggle for your survival. If you stop, you lose, you die. And so, you know, the fact that I fucking doubled down, the fact that I podcasted from jail, the fact that I, you know, was still encouraging people to go out, the fact that I didn't throw our other guys under the bus, you know, they thought that that was a more admirable course than had been taken by others.
Does that include Richard Spencer quitting his college tour?
Well, I don't hold that against Richard because Richard lost his security force, right? When the TWP disbanded and everybody was, you know, shitting all over that, you know, whole thing. What's Richard going to do? He's going to go walk into one of these places without a bunch of guys to fight when the Antifas fucking come out with spike knuckles and try to kill people? So, you know, Richard had no choice as far as I'm concerned.
I get the sense online that there are some people who are unhappy with his role as like a figurehead.
Well, that exists, but, you know, first things first, I'm not going to undermine the guy with you. And, you know, whatever, and people have disagreements with it. And, like, I don't really know exactly how it was. You know, people say that he coined the term alt-right, but, you know, Paul Gottfried will take the same exact credit. And so, you know, like, what is it about Richard Spencer that makes him the, you know, the fucking go-to guy when everybody wants to know about the alt-right? There's a lot of people who have significant disagreements about the validity of his position. And so, you know, what all to make it at, you know, anybody's guess.
Okay. Sorry, there's a huge distract. I've definitely picked up on what he used to be considered on the good side of optics, and this like optics side, the people who care about optics, right? And now I feel like he's on the other side, like they think he's bad optics. Is that accurate? Or am I misreading?
Well, there's a couple of things to that. One is the optics debate is not an honest debate a lot of the time, okay? I mean, Richard Spencer's a good-looking guy. He you know, cleans up nice, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know that he's ever said anything really that offensive to reasonable people. And so, you know, as far as that type of, you know, optics things goes, he's fine. But the thing is, you gotta see what happens in this optics debate. I mean, people throw the fucking accusation in both goddamn directions, right? You know, people say, the same people who say that TWP is a bunch of scumbag, OxyContin romper stompers, right, will fucking turn around and say that Richard Spencer's a trust fund pretty boy, right? They're making completely opposite complaints. It's just whatever critique they can make of somebody, they make, and that tells me that it's not an honest conversation. I think there are people in our ranks trying to destroy us.
And why are they doing that? Like, is it petty jealousy or a power play? Like, why do you think? In
some cases, I think that they're Jews, frankly. You know, like I think that they are Jewish infiltrators who are here for the purpose of destroying us. It's literally what I think.
Who do you think is one of those people?
Weave, for one, there's credible evidence that he's at least part Jewish. The exact amount remains, undefined. But, the people who are doing this are people who don't show up at stuff, right? And so it could be any number of people. Like I said, a lot of the complaints are coming from anonymous accounts, right? So, like, you have all these fucking people who nobody ever met, nobody's ever gonna meet, nobody could identify, nobody could pick out of a lineup, right? And they're driving all this hysteria on the internet, and all these other people who have to remain anonymous for the sake of keeping their jobs, etc., they're just responding to these people they talk to online, right? And so, for all I know, the SPLC has 100 fucking Gab accounts that they run. I don't know, that would make a lot of sense to me, because, like I said, the complaints contradict one another, right? You say Richard Spencer and TWP. There's a great piece on altright.com that I read on the website titled "A Picture of Unity," right? And you see this TWP guy who's in his, black clad with tattoos on his hands and shit, with his arms wrapped around Greg Conti, and he's wearing like a shirt and tie,
Oh, yeah. I saw that live.
Yeah. So, like, this was portrayed as like a class unification, right? But there's an effort within the movement, and it's difficult to identify who's exactly doing it, but there's so class division, okay? And that's as Jewish as the fucking Shabbat. That, like, you turn capital against labor, and you foment revolution this way. The idea that people would be doing that in the alt-right, I mean, it spells subversion to me.
Yeah, what do you think about that as a libertarian? The sort of class divisions seem to be getting bigger than consistent. Like, that's been around for a while, but it seems only getting bigger.
Well, I mean, I think it's destructive, right? Because we're an ethnocentric movement. We can't afford that shit. You can't have an ethnocentric movement that's divided along every other line. That's catastrophic. And so, like, you look at even like the everybody accuses us of misogyny, of course, but the actual position on this stuff is like, okay, yeah, like, women would be subordinate if we had our way about everything, but that is entirely like to provide them with a better existence, is at least our view of it. I understand you'd probably disagree, but it's genuinely not hatred of women and stuff like that, but you see some of this on the blogs, right? So people are like, okay, let's have an ethnocentric movement to save our race and nation, and then let's divide ourselves along class lines, age lines, and gender lines. Well, that is subversive. That's a purposeful effort to destroy it.
I have noticed that it seems like any female in the alt-right eventually comes under fire from the alt-right.
Well,
like Lauren Southern or whoever.
Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is, like, Lauren Southern, would more accurately be categorized as alt-right, okay? Lauren Southern is not out there naming the Jew, and the people who are get pissed off about that. If you can't point out the Jewish problem, then you're not solving it in the minds of a lot of people, right? And so that's one of the reasons that Lauren Southern comes under fire. But I'll say this. There is a very specific gender component to that, which is, for one, there's a couple of things. So, the gender thing with women, we don't want women involved in fucking politics, okay? I don't think that you should have the right to vote. And even though I agree with Lauren Southern on a lot of things, I don't think that she should have the right to vote. And so the idea that women would be thought leaders in a right-wing movement is repulsive to a lot of us. And so while I hold women in very high regard, and I think that they should be treated with the utmost respect, and we should open doors for them and do all sorts of, chivalrous things, I don't think that they should be prominent thought leaders and figures within the movement. And so that's part of the reason that when people come down on them. But there's another component to it, which is, when you do have these people who are like, every woman they talk to is a whore, and that is a completely different phenomenon. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Are you sure it's not just like points on a continuum?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Are you sure that's not just different points on a continuum?
No, they are different. I don't think women should be involved in politics and all women are whores are not points in a continuum. They are opposite positions. They are hostile to one another.
Because you think your movement ultimately respects women.
Yes. I literally view women as more important than men, okay? That's why men can go into war zones and lay down their lives to protect the women, right? So, like, yeah, like, I think that everything men do is supposed to be organized around protecting women and their virtue. And so, yeah, I hold women in extraordinarily high regard up to the fucking point that I'm willing to die for them, for fuck's sake. That stands in stark contrast to all women are whores, fuck you, bitch, I'll rape you, right? It's a completely different ideology.
But do you think the movement suffers at all from, like, attracting a lot of, like, angry teenage boys who, like, have sort of juvenile ideas like all women are whores?
Well, you gotta understand something, right? Like, being associated with us is dangerous, right? So, like, you know, have you read Bray's book? I can't recommend highly enough that you do that. Mark Bray, Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook, okay? Like, he talked about this very specifically. The whole point of Antifa, the whole entire point of the media smears, the whole entire point of frivolous lawsuits and all this other shit is to drive up the cost of being associated with us so that stable, fucking presentable people won't associate, right? So, like, if everything, like, just imagine for a second, you know, I understand this would be very difficult for you to conjure in your mind, but try with me. Imagine you agreed with everything I said, but being seen in public with me would get you assaulted, right? Like, you would be very unlikely to be seen in public with me at that point, right?
I mean, certain people, yes.
Most people, right? People who have shit to lose, they don't want anything to do with that, no matter how righteous. They're like, I've got a 6-figure income, a family, and a nice house. I'm not going to get a fucking M80 thrown at my fucking face because you're right about a topic. That's what most people have. The only people who are willing to associate with us are people who are willing to deal with that type of danger, right? And so, yeah, like, of course, you know, every political movement has its fucking fringes and its troubles and its troubled people, you know? I mean, politics generally, you know, a lot of people get in politics because they got fucking problems with themselves and they think that the society needs to change, so they get involved politically rather than working on their own problems. It makes sense?
Yeah.
That's all politics. It's not limited to us, right? But when you come to us, you're like, you know, a lot of the people who have that issue, for one, they're looking for the most radical change, right? Which means that they are likely, in a lot of cases, they're the least happy with their lots in life, right? And you're going to be walking into certain danger, and so, you know, the people who are willing to do that are people who actually don't have a lot to lose, or who are, for whatever reason, willing to take extraordinary risks. And some of the people who come into this do so because, as in my case, they have, you know, a fucking compulsion to do what they perceive to be the right thing. Other people do it because that's the type of lives that they live. And so it's not that big of an adjustment. And so that's going to, you know, instill you with some troubled folks. You know, the good news about that, though, is, like, if you have competent leadership, I mean, the military has the same thing, right? I mean, how many fucked up people join the army, right? But, you know, when they join the military, they go into boot camp and they get the fucking crap worked out of them. They break them down, they build them back up. And the problem with us is that we just don't have competent leadership or resources to do that sort of thing to shape these guys up. And so, you know, I hope that, you know, at some point in the future that changes, and then we can actually try to help these guys when they come in.
What do you think of the leadership of, like, the old guys, like Kevin McDonald, Sam Dixon, like those people, David Duke, I guess, like the people who've been around for a very long time?
So these guys are what I would. What was the second name that you said there?
Sam Dixon.
I really don't know too much about him. I know Kevin McDonald, and I know some of David Duke. I view them, they're definitely thought leaders. I've never known them to organize men on the ground, right? I don't know them to lead an organization, and so, they're useful information-wise and ideologically, but they're not going to take a bunch of fucked up guys in their early 20s and turn them into disciplined figures. And so they're very good thought leaders. I mean, I sell Kevin McDonald's books on my website. I've had him on the show twice. I think very highly of him. I'm reading David Duke's book right now, but I've never known them to be leaders of men.
Who do you consider the leaders of the movement?
We lack one. Charlottesville washed all that shit out. I mean, it was fucking plain to see that the people who were leading us weren't capable, and nobody has yet emerged, in part because if you do, you're going to get your head knocked off.
Yeah, the strategy you're describing of Antifa it has been effective. Right?
Well, when you have the cooperation of government, finance, and media to commit criminal acts, yeah, you get away with them. That happens, right? So
what would be your way of countering that strategy?
Well, I'm sort of doing that now. The first thing is you don't back down to it. I mean, look. That infamous crying Nazi video, I specifically said on it, I'm not a Nazi, okay? Leading up to Charlottesville, I always countered the Nazi fucking meme and stuff. I'm like, I'm a racist libertarian is really my fucking attitude. But everybody's like, Nazi, 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 so I fucking get out of jail, and I'm like, fine. Keep on calling everybody a Nazi, and eventually you're going to be right. And so I changed my phone number to 424-3-GO-NAZI on the show, and I started fucking selling copies of Mein Kampf on the website, right? Instead of backing down when these people fucking come after you, you turn their energy against them, right? And so if everybody wants to call me a Nazi, well, fine. Then I guess Nazis are going to become a fucking thing in America now, right? And so that's how you counter this stuff. When people tell me we've got to do X, Y, and Z, otherwise the media are going to call us violent Nazis. And I'm like, well, they're going to call you violent Nazis anyway because they're Jews, right? They're producing war propaganda against you. You can't do what these people ask you to do because they're the fucking enemy, right? So, the reason Antifa is effective is because they don't stop, right? Well, we can't do that either. Now, that's not to say that we can't have any tact. I had an interview with Reason Magazine the other day, right? And when he said, what do you think the alt-right should do next? Well, at this point, I told him we should keep our fucking mouths shut until after the midterms, right? If the communists, we faded from view, and I have to give the optics cucks their due on this. We faded from view, and Antifa didn't lose their bloodlust, right? So they got to attacking fucking immigration officers and congressmen and fucking prayer groups. And that makes them look like fucking assholes, and I couldn't ask for a better favor going into November, But
when you started selling Mein Kampf, you changed your number to be a Nazi.
Yeah.
To say that. Does that reflect a change in your views, or is it just a middle finger?
Well, it's more of a middle finger than a change in the views, but I will say, I wasn't informed enough to be a Nazi when I went to jail, right? I never read Mein Kampf. You know what I'm saying? I never read Nazi literature. All right. All I knew about Nazis was, oh my God, they murdered 6 million Jews and are the epitome of evil. Right. Well, when I'm sitting in a fucking box all day, shockingly enough, I got some time on my hand and Nazis are sending me books. So I read Mein Kampf. I read the Kevin McDonald 3-book series on the Jewish question. I read Hitler's Revolution by Richard Teeter. I read a lot of this stuff. And, I have my disagreements with the Hitler administration, but suffice it to say, we've been fed a lot of bullshit about fucking World War II. And so I can speak intelligently about National Socialism now. And it informs my perspective. But the Nazi thing, like I said to you before, Al, like I'm a free markets guy. Okay, I would have converted before I went to jail. I would have converted to Islam before I called myself a socialist, and not because I'm anxious to pray 5 times a day. Okay, but if people are going to be like, ha ha ha, we're going to chase people into hiding by calling them Nazis, I'm going to be like, no, as a matter of fact, you're not going to do that. You seem to be so concerned about Nazis taking over. Well, guess what? I got some fucking Nazis right here. And that's doubling down. It's a middle finger.
Okay.
Like I'm an anti-Semite, right? But so is Henry Ford and Walt Disney, right? Not everybody who fucking is skeptical of Jews is a member of a fucking 19th century political party.
If you've been reading on the Nazis as a political party, did you find relevant the debate, basically, kind of like between maybe your libertarian views and the TWP more socialist views? Like that was a wedge within the Nazi Party in Germany.
Yeah, there's this whole thing called the Night of Long Knives, and they cleaned out the fucking bad guys. And so, yeah, I mean, people have different views on things. Here's what happens, all right? So, what happens when you end up with diversity in your country is people end up separated along ethnic lines, okay? That's not how things are supposed to work. Like, white people disagree with each other on shit. You know what I'm saying? And so, part of the reason I'm an ethno-nationalist is so that white people can work out their differences with one another and not worry about defeating the other ethnic groups, Of course, we have disagreements with one another on how the government ought to operate like any other fucking people, but it is necessary at present for whites to be a voting bloc because we're being overtaken in our own country.
Have you ever, just even as a thought experiment, thought of it the other way? Which is instead of class divisions being a way to conceal racial divisions, it's the other way around, that like the racial divisions are being amplified and sort of cynically manipulated in order to conceal the class divisions, which is like a greater problem.
Well, no, I think it's the other way around, right? And here's why.
I know that's what you think, but like, have you ever
I have considered
thought about it?
Yeah, of course. I, like everybody else in America, Elle, I used to think of things in those terms, right? And I've changed my views on them. I'm going to explain to you why. Okay, it's not. And what happens is the racial divisions are sown, and what ends up happening is they try to pull lower class whites into the racial divisions in order to accomplish the ethnic goal. Okay, and so like you can't accomplish anything in America without white people. You know what I'm saying? We're still the majority. We still control most things, and if you don't have some number of white people on board with what you're doing, you just can't do it. And so they have their instantaneous voting block of their non-whites, and then they try to insert class into it in order to get whites on board, in order to go after whites. And this is the whole point of the Jewish question, right? What happens with Jews is they displace white elites and they try to rule the society, and they can't do that without stirring up the lower class whites. Okay. And so Jews portray themselves as white people. They say, we're with you. And even though we're incredibly wealthy, we're on the side of the little guy. And so you should help us displace our competitors. And that's the racial view of the conflict. And in my opinion, it brings things into greater focus than concentrating on socioeconomic status. Because if you look at all of these other components of life, IQ is just the easiest way to draw the distinction. Okay, like if you control for socioeconomic status, these other divisions don't go away along racial lines. Like people think that blacks are committing crimes and going to prison and ending up shot by police because they're poor, but if you control for socioeconomic status, it's the same problem, right? And that's because, you know, blacks are fucking prone to certain goddamn behaviors that whites are just not as prone to. And so these things are racial problems, and everybody's trying not to look at it that way. But you can't, like, when information is true and significant and you ignore it for an article of faith, you make bad political decisions.
So, if you look back to the pre-1965 Immigration Act, right? Like, that's the same body, you guys. It was a big turning point.
Yeah.
If we look back to the 1900s up to the 50s, there were much fewer social programs, all of that. There were so many white people who were so incredibly poor. How do you incorporate that into your analysis?
Well, I'm not surprised that there are poor people. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially back when, you know, this, you know, when fucking, you know, think about this, you know, people who are so incredibly poor. Well, you know, in America today, poor people live better than kings did fucking 300 years ago. And so.
But, right. So part of that is corporations that value diversity, social programs.
Corporations do not value diversity in social programs. They take advantage of pawning off the cost of their cheap labor onto the society. Okay, so if corporations were compelled to bear the full cost of their labor, they would choose better laborers. Okay, like the idea that you would just go and import a bunch of fucking low-skilled people from another country to go do a job around white people when you actually had to bear the cost of that is ridiculous. And so, you know, if Walmart can pay somebody a fucking pittance and they can collect welfare on the side, sure, Walmart doesn't give a fuck what their door greeter looks like, right? But that's a subsidy. You know, immigration is a government program. It's not freedom. You know what I'm saying?
But like, before these programs that you don't like, before they existed, there were many, many more poor people in the world. There were many more poor people in America, like literacy, right? Like many, many more white people couldn't read. So like how, and now like illiteracy is what, like 4%, 2%? Like, so how do you incorporate the benefit in the status of white people into your analysis?
Well, I think that you're drawing a correlation as a causation. And so the fact that as time goes forward, conditions improve has nothing to do with the fact that diversity has increased as well, right? The fact of the matter is, with every day that passes, some new invention is created, some other way of doing something that increases the quality of life for people. And the fact that you've flooded the country with immigrants at the same time as that has nothing to do with this, right? Here's an example, right? So I used to I used to study like DWI laws a lot, right? And so the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration does all these like frankly Orwellian things to try to reduce drunk driving. And sure enough, as the years go by, highway fatalities go down, and the NHTSA says, look at all these wonderful things that have happened as a result of what we've done to stop drunk driving. Well, they leave out the fact that, like, you know, airbags were invented. You know what I'm saying? They're like crash safety was improved, and that all these other things happen, and they just credit what they're focused like a laser beam on, okay? Here's what we know about diversity, L, that diversity plus proximity equals conflict. I mean, like the fact that you care about racism shows me that you know that diversity brings conflict. Like racism is pretty much, well, the definition has gotten kind of, you know, convoluted over the years. But like, you're literally saying that there's ethnic conflict, and then you're saying diversity is a strength. Well, you can't have it both ways, right?
Well, what if we think about it this way, right? Like, there are many human instincts. Like, there's been studies that, like, babies are racist. Like, babies smile more at people of their own race or something like that. I don't know. A lot of social research is fun, but listen, just let's just talk this through, okay? So there's a lot of human instincts that we've built society, we've built these structures around to minimize because it makes for a better society. Like, we tell teenagers not to get pregnant, because like having babies later in life tends to mean you're more prosperous, less crime, all of that. Delayed gratification on this most basic level, right? Like, you've heard of a marshmallow test, right? Like, if you're able to delay gratification, if you're able to force yourself to get up and go to work on time and to not steal and to, to value the long-term gains instead of the short-term ones, then society benefits more broadly. So if even if it's natural or instinctive for people to want to stick with their own group, if there's a bigger benefit in limiting that instinct, why would you not want to pursue that?
Well, I understand that blacks would certainly benefit from whites getting over their perfectly healthy instinct to creep criminals out of their society, right? I just don't understand how whites benefit from that. Yeah, I'm all about delaying gratification, but that's like the most implicitly white thing I've ever heard, right? Like delaying gratification is a fucking totally white thing. And why? How about you ask the fucking anti-racists who say that, right? Like, they literally say, like we've organized all the incentives of our society away from future time orientation. And we've done that specifically because it fucking benefits non-whites, because they have a higher time preference and they're not as smart and they don't think things through. And so if you want to live in a society full of people who delay gratification, the best thing you can do is surround yourself with white people.
That's that's just like, that's what you look at and see from your observation, like, in the natural world.
Well, this is just, it's something that is plain to see. Have you never interacted with black people before?
Of course I have. That's why what you're saying to me sounds ludicrous.
I'm sorry?
Of course I have. That's why what you're saying to me sounds ludicrous.
Okay, but
and you're from the greater New York area. You said that you dated a Dominican woman. Like, when you dated that Dominican woman, did you really feel that, like, she was, like, not human?
I never said that these people aren't human, Elle. That's a miscategorization of my views. You know what I'm saying? And that's when I get so frustrated about this stuff, Like, one of the things that fucking absolutely tore me up about this whole thing, right? Like, that black girl that I almost had a baby with, she started sending me text messages after I was all over the television. She was like, what the fuck? I don't feel safe. I'm going to have to move all this shit. And I'm like, listen to me. I was still fucking trying to hire a lawyer and a bunch of people out there trying to kill me. I'm like, listen, what you're seeing right now has nothing to do with our relationship. I'm not a threat to your safety. Give me a little time and I'll talk to you about this. And then I ended up in jail. I spoke to her briefly after I got out of jail. And I just assured her, I'm like, I have no fucking problem with you. I have a political problem that I'm dealing with, And the conversation didn't really last very long, but, she seemed to have forgiven me. But that literally had me in fucking tears. That, like, this girl I was fucking completely in love with thought I was going to kill her because I was a fucking, some kind of genocidal monster, And it's not how I view the world.
Okay, well, you see the connection she's making? This idea that she's, like, not fit intellectually or emotionally or whatever for our society. It's not hard to say, okay, what's the next step? Do you want to remove me from that?
Well, look, this entire fucking thing is difficult, okay? But that's because, like, all this stuff was known, okay? Like, it seems like race is the one thing that we understood better fucking 300 years ago than we do today. It's the stupidest fucking thing in the world. The people are trying to erase this information from the collective consciousness of the society, okay? People understood that there were differences between these groups and they should have been kept separated. And now we've been doing it for so long that, like, it's just very painful to correct the problem, okay? Yes, when you put boys and girls in a room together, they have sex, they love each other, and they form relationships and stuff. None of that offsets the massive costs of diversity that are being fucking tearing this goddamn country apart. You know, look, Black Lives Matter is burning fucking cities to the ground over fucking violent criminals. Okay, and then I'm supposed to fucking be told that that's just the language of the unheard. And that's going to be like paved over and everybody's going to forget about it in 2 weeks. Yet, you know, Charlottesville, fucking one fucking asshole gets in a car wreck and fucking the entire country is supposed to mourn this until the end of fucking time. Right? Like, it's nonsense. This is not fucking, this is a completely inaccurate portrayal of the world that we live in. And so what we know is that we have massive transfers of wealth going from whites to non-whites. And that it's not bringing those non-whites up to our level, and we are just continually expected to keep on having extracted from us the fruits of our labor. We're going to be a puppet to the Israeli government and send our fucking sons and daughters off to fucking die in foreign deserts for a country that uses and abuses us. You know, these are the costs of diversity. And yes, I am willing to fucking put aside my emotional attachment to fucking people that I care about in order to solve that larger problem, because fucking our fucking sons and daughters dying in a fucking foreign desert is not worth the goddamn expense.
When you were interacting with that woman, like, did you feel you were fundamentally unable to get along? Like, did she have a
No, but again, that's not the idea. Is not that individuals are fundamentally incapable of getting along, right? Like, one of the other people, one of my other black friends hit me up in the wake of this too. You know, a Jamaican guy who was like my bar buddy in Long Island. He's like, dude, what the fuck? And I'm like, dude, I'm kind of busy right now. I'll get back to you, but like, just know you and me are cool, man. He's like, I know, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was fucking funny, right? And so, like, you know, like, I have fucking relationships with these people. You know what I'm saying? I would go over to New York. Fucking my best friend growing up was Jewish, right? My best friend as a child was Jewish. And it was also, incidentally, my first exposure to pornography and marijuana, interesting to say. And so, like, you know, yeah, I have all these fucking relationships. It doesn't mean that I fucking found myself incapable of getting along with them. We have all the evidence in the world that lots of people of very different backgrounds, they get along with each other. You put people in the fucking room together and they figure out how to cooperate for the most part, right? That does not change what I said about massive fucking wealth transfers and crime and fucking death on our streets, right? You know, half the murders in America are committed by blacks. And, you know, if people think that that's 13% of the population, well, it's not black grandmothers doing this. It's young black males. So you have like 3% of the population committing half the homicides in a country. You take them out of the equation, and we're fucking Norway. You know what I'm saying? I have relationships with people. I like them. They're decent people. But I could fucking cut the fucking murder rate in half in my country if I would sacrifice those relationships. I'll get over it, you know?
And so do you find the research for non-racial causes of that violence, do you find that not compelling?
No, I find it complete and utter horseshit, right? Hey, if it's, you know, it's so funny to me, right? You'll look at correlations in one thing and think that that's the most relevant thing. You're like, hey, as time goes forward, you know, our quality of life increases. And then there's diversity has also increased. Therefore, diversity increases our quality of life. You take that correlation as gospel. And then you're like, 3% of the population is committing 50% of the homicides, and I'm going to completely ignore that?
Well, I'm not familiar with those statistics.
Well, you know, if you're going to be somebody who fucking takes racism seriously, maybe you endeavor to find out.
Like, a big part of the analysis, right, that, like, it's not a social cause that, like, people, ethnic and racial minorities face higher crime rates in their communities. Right? It's the idea of the alt-right, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that that's a biological thing, right, not a social thing. And a big part of that is IQ test, right?
It's not the entirety of it, but yeah, it's significant. You know, like at the 85 IQ level, that's where you have your criminals, right? Like retards are not usually criminals, right? You have your fucking sub 70 IQ or whatever, you know, they're not out for conflict, right? Around 85, so like, go ahead.
How do you incorporate that, like all of human IQ has gone up like 30 points over time. Like what used to get you a score, like they've had to recalculate the test, right? So like what used to get you a score of 100 would get you like 80, right? And like, or like 60, 70 years ago, Jews in the military scored lower than average on IQ tests. Now they score higher than average. Like, do you think that like Jews evolved in the last 50 years, or like the entire human species evolved?
All right. So there's a couple of things here. One is I don't know the military that you started talking about with Jewish IQ. Okay, I've heard that reference before, but I can't speak intelligently to it, so I'm sorry, I have to leave it out of my analysis. IQ tends to go up over time because our society rewards intelligence, right? It's a selective pressure. If you're smart, you make more money and shit, right? And so, you know, it's a very big advantage to be smarter, and so one would expect that to increase with time. The other component of that is, now, I don't know if these things are racially segregated, right? Now, we have an increase in race mixing, right? And so if you have, you know, a generation of blacks who are now 25% more white, then that's going to significantly increase their IQ, right? And so that's one component of it. But that brings up blacks, not whites. You see what I'm saying? And so, you know, I'm not surprised that that happens, but it's not like, you know, but blacks and whites blacks are not catching up to whites. That is one thing that remains constant, right? Where you see.
No, it is shrunk. It is shrunk. It is shrunk. The gap between, I mean, of course, like, there's much debate about what IQ even measures anyway, but it has shrunk since the 80s.
No. As a result of race mixing, you might have people who count as black who now have higher IQs than their 100% black, you know, grandparent. But no, blacks and whites have not caught up to one another. That gap is not closing.
The gap has shrunk, though.
No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't.
Well, maybe we're reading different research.
What you're reading is research that's the other problem. This is the problem with race mixing too. So like these things get convoluted, right? Like I said, if you look at IQs of whites and blacks and mulattoes, okay, it's as predictable as the fucking sunrise. The black has the lower IQ, the mulatto has the middle IQ, and the white has the high IQ. That's you know, I mean, to the extent that such things are predictable, right? And so that is I think that what you're looking at is a result of race mixing. They're counting as blacks, mulatto. You have the same thing, like blacks in America and blacks in Africa have a standard deviation between them, right? So like blacks in America on average have an 85 IQ, blacks in Africa have a average of 70, okay? Well, that's partially because, you know, Thomas Jefferson et al. Were fucking their slaves, right? And so race mixing increased the IQ of the American black population over the African black population.
And so why do you care so much about that?
Why do I care so much about that? Is that what you? I didn't hear. What did you say?
Yeah. Why do you care so much about that?
Well, because I'm for the same thing I fucking said to you on the thing, Al. Right? Blacks are offing each other in staggering number from coast to coast. 3% of the population is committing half of our fucking homicides. I think it's a problem worth solving.
But have you ever been a victim of a crime?
Yeah, I was a victim of a crime on August 12th, you know, by a fucking little skinny white asshole, you know. Yes. I've been a victim of a crime numerous times throughout the years, and mostly at the hands of my fellow whites. As is usually the case. Most crime is intra-racial, right?
Right. So why is it such a big problem then? It doesn't, why would black people pose a threat to you?
Why is it a problem that 3% of the population causes half of the fucking murders in my country? Is that a serious question?
the crime within African American communities is like low income African American communities.
But you don't have, look, low income is not an excuse for fucking murder, right? Like, yeah, like crime increases in white societies as you go down the socioeconomic spectrum, but not nearly at the rate that it does with fucking blacks, right? I mean, even like...
They're all dying of fentanyl overdoses.
I'm sorry?
They're all dying of fentanyl overdoses.
I'm sorry, they're all dying of what?
Heroin.
Heroin?
Yes.
Yeah, we've got a drug problem in the country. Yeah, that's one of those.
That's evidence of low IQ.
I think that's evidence of an immigration problem and loose borders.
Really?
Right? Look, hell, you know, like fucking blacks have, you know, if the fucking blacks are fucking killing each other, like that's a problem worth solving, right? Don't you think so? Don't you think that Black Lives Matter?
Why do you think the problem is? I don't actually know what your solution is. Like, what the fix you propose is what? Like,
what I genuinely want, Elle, is I'm being half disingenuous when I say, is that a problem worth solving? I don't actually have any intention of solving problems in the black community. What I want is to not share a system of government with them, okay? I want to live under a system of government that is completely of ethnic groups that don't have interests that are diametrically opposed to my own, people who have reasonably similar lifestyles and worldviews, so that we're not all clamoring over control of the state to fuck each other over every 2, 4, and 6 years.
And you don't think that would occur even if, I don't know, America were 90% white?
Don't get me wrong. There would still be political battles, right? But it would not be massive wealth transfers from one race to another. You know what I'm saying? It would not be.
There would still be wealth transfers.
Yeah, that's what governments do, sadly. And I'd like to reduce that as much as possible. And you know who votes for wealth transfers the most? Democrats. And you know who votes for Democrats? Browns and Jews. You know? So like making a whites-only ethno-state would eliminate the Democrat Party, right? Like, our general elections would look like Republican primaries, and that, in my opinion, would be a whole lot more tolerable.
Why do you think that's true?
What, have you never looked at fucking demographics and voting?
Of course I have, but there are many people, in fact, the plurality of white people who want, like, healthcare to significantly expand it. Like,
yeah. Richard Spencer's one of them, right? And I'd love to be able to have a fucking argument with Richard Spencer about how we should plan our economics. Unfortunately, like, I have to band with Richard Spencer and other people that I disagree with because I'm being displaced as a racial group, and 3% of the population is causing 50% of our homicides, right? I have to get together with people who I disagree with on a whole range of policy issues so that I can combat the fact that the state of Israel controls my military and sends our sons and daughters off to die in wars that have nothing to fucking do with us, right? I don't want to deal with that anymore. I'd rather have Richard Spencer as my political opponent than fucking Hillary Clinton.
I just don't. Why does there need to be like greater racial homogeneity to debate like whether there should be single payer health care?
Well, understand something. I'd prefer there not to be a debate over single payer health care, right? I would prefer that everybody fucking agreed with me that people should pay for their own shit, right? That's what my preference would be, okay? But I have to even put that aside, and I have to accept as my political ally Richard Spencer, who disagrees with me on like lots of policy issues, because I have to save my fucking race from fucking extinction. I don't like that.
The Nordic countries, if you look at the Nordic countries, much less diverse, they have a very large social welfare state.
Yeah, and I don't imagine that I'm going to win every political argument in the ethno-state either.
So why is the ethno-state a more important value to you than libertarianism?
Well, for one, libertarianism has been fucking trying its ass off for decades and gotten fucking nowhere, right? Part of the reason that libertarianism has gotten nowhere is because of the fucking diversity, right? You ever been to a libertarian fucking event?
Well, why hasn't it gotten anywhere in Sweden then?
I don't participate in Swedish politics, sweetheart. And by the way, Sweden is a whole lot more diverse than it used to be, right? They fucking, you have this Pollyanna socialist attitude, and then they open up the borders and they get flooded with fucking migrants, and that's going to be the destruction of the country, right? And so I am firmly of the opinion that their socialized medical system has something to do with that. These people forgot how to compete, right? They forgot how to compete because they're a socialist economy, and then they're like, yeah, everybody's the same. Come on in. And then fucking they got raped.
Have you followed the rise of the fascist movement in Italy?
It comes up from time to time, on the show. But again, I got sort of more pressing matters here at home, so I haven't taught myself Italian. And so I don't know exactly what's happening over there. But, you have right-wing movements coming to power in every white country, right? Because...
Yeah, but a significant part of their platform is a universal job guarantee and, like, rent control.
Yeah.
And, like, a lot of economic handouts, or however you want to think of it. A lot of the welfare.
Yeah.
So...
Because the other side promises the same thing. Now, maybe these people genuinely believe all that's good. I don't know. Okay, I disagree with them. Okay, the fact that I have economic disagreements with people who I have to band together with for political expediency is not surprising. It's part of the problem, right? Now, the fact of the matter is, like, if you're a right wing party and you're trying to solve the ethnic problem, and you say, we're going to solve the ethnic problem and you're going to be completely on your fucking own. Well, when the other side is saying, hey, everybody's going to have everything they want and we're going to have diversity, you lose the fucking election. So maybe these people genuinely believe it, or maybe they're doing the same thing the fucking left has been doing for the entirety of their existence and promising people pie in the sky to get votes so they can actually do something about the problems that we face, Like, if I could socialize the medical system and thereby close the goddamn borders and stop the massive wealth transfers from one race to another, fine, right? Like, okay, fine. Everybody goes to the fucking hospital whenever they want. Fine. Just stop the immigration, right? Get the fucking Jews out of here so we can stop fighting their fucking wars for them and everybody can have their fucking food paid for. There's a more immediate problem than my economic fucking analysis.
I guess it's just, I've like followed the libertarian movement a long time. It's just kind of surprising to me you would see the threat. I mean, like, for example, you keep citing crime. Crime rates have been plummeting for 20 years. They're like at record lows.
Right, and look at all of the things that we've done to accomplish that. The leftists are rioting in the streets about an out-of-control militarized police state. They used to care about that. Well, why do you think that happened? It's not because fucking white people are cheating on their taxes, L. It's because fucking non-whites are tearing the country apart. And so now the police are driving around in fucking tanks, running around with machine guns and shit,
But the crime rate has gone down.
Yes, it has. We've opened up a massive surveillance state and fucking started tapping everybody's phones and reading everybody's emails and having police run around and fucking gun people down on the streets. There you go. That's your low crime rate in your diversified society. Is a massive police state that monitors everybody and fucking brutally represses any fucking uprising.
Have you read much about China and their police state, basically?
Yeah. What about them?
Well, okay. I would be curious what you think. China is like way more advanced than us in terms of facial recognition technology.
Yeah.
And so they've taken the police state to this level that seems like out of a sci-fi movie. Like they can pick a face out of a crowd of 100 million, and they've apprehended like a lot of fugitives or whatever in the subway through facial recognition. But you should look up what the Chinese are doing to the Uyghur population. Like, I don't know if you would be, I don't know how you would feel about the ethnic politics, right? But like the Uyghurs are their ethnic Muslims, and if there's kind of a sense that they're practicing on the Uyghurs what they want to do with the rest of society. So I'd just be curious, like, what your view on that is, because, you know, China very much wants it to be all Han Chinese society, and they will go to very much greater lengths than the U.S. does.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're ruled by the Communist Party. I'm not surprised that they do, like, scary, brutal things, Al.
Right. Well, like, what do you... It's still like a society striving towards racial homogeneity.
Well, what they're striving for is equality, and like somebody figured out that that's not going to work alongside diversity, right? And so
I don't know if it's equality exactly. I mean, there's many like very wealthy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention that equality is a scam. Okay, so.
Well, I'm just saying you should just like do some casual googling. I would be curious what you think about that.
I've done some reading on the subject. Like, I know these like re-education camps where they bring like these Muslims in there and fucking tell them about the fucking dangers of religion, and they put them through a fucking absolute hellscape. Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I know that they have, you know, I don't know all the details of the facial recognition or whatever, but I mean, it's a massive surveillance state. They don't, that culture doesn't value freedom the way that we do, you know? And so, you know, I'm not surprised that all those things are happening. But then again, when I talk about my ethno state, I'm not talking about bringing a bunch of communist Chinese into it, right?
Well, would you follow their tactics?
Would I follow their tactics? No. Like, I don't want to re-educate Muslims. I just want them to stay home.
What would you do with the people already here?
Well, the truth of the matter is, Elle, I don't think that I'm going to be able to ethnically cleanse the continent of North America. Like, my advocacy has been and continues to be political migration. I want the people who see things the way we see them to move to an area that is already relatively ethnically homogenous and take over the government there. That's why I moved to New Hampshire, albeit not for, you know, racial reasons at first.
Well, so I'm going to have a call that I have to get on in a few minutes, so I should go, but it was good talking to you.
Likewise. You take care, sweetheart.
You too, and just think over an interview.
What's that?
You just think over an interview. You can bash me all you want to, but just consider it.
Believe me, I've done a lot of thinking about this. All right?
I know, but there's more time to come. There's more to come.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you do some thinking about some of the things that I've said to you? Because every time I tell you an indisputable hard reality, you just try to find some other way of thinking about that. This is why you're not supposed to be able to vote.
Well, don't you think that's more interesting? You want me to just say yes to everything you say?
Ideally, that would probably solve a lot of problems. I understand. I understand that would not be nearly as interesting to you, and I appreciate being challenged on my ideas. However, you haven't challenged anything I've said, right? You're just like, well, now that you've provided the indisputable proof of the correctness of your point, I'm going to come up with some emotional reaction to it and try to get you to fucking have a different solution. It's not how reason works. You know,
not quite how I see it.
All right. I didn't think so. But like I said, that's why you're not supposed to vote.
Well, let's just continue this conversation. I'm going to send you the article I was referring to that references the IQ scores taken in the military.
Yeah.
Several decades ago.
Yeah, do that. I'll take a look at it, and we'll discuss it another day.
Okay, cool. All right.
Thanks
for talking to me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's it. It's over. Then we organized the death squads for the people who wrecked America.
You know what you call people?